We're following breaking news. A Baltimore student shot and killed near his high school. New tonight, the search for the gunman as our team demands answers from city leaders. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates' gun sentencing bill under fire. Why some are calling it mass incarceration and how he's defending the legislation.
Why don't you say there's a problem with mass felonies? That's the issue.
Our kids are falling further behind.
City graduation rates hit the lowest point in 9 years. Fox 45 News Project Baltimore dives deep into which schools are falling short.
We've got a major problem and we have not solved the issue.
Former Governor Larry Hogan announces he will not run for president in 2024.
I sort of decided to put the party and the country first.
Why he believes it puts him in a better position to help the Republican Party.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Another teenager has lost their life to violence in Baltimore City. Police say he was shot at a park across from Patterson High School.
Now, he is the 6th Baltimore City public school student murdered this year and the 5th person under 18 killed in the city.
In Annapolis, debate over what to do about juvenile crime as Democrats push legislation that could impact how some murder cases are handled, and a bill that would allow for tougher penalties for gun offenders gets pushed back.
Our team coverage begins with Rebecca Pryor. She joins us live with a closer look at what happened today. Rebecca.
Yeah, that Patterson High School student was shot just feet from his school when he was supposed to be in the classroom. The tragedy is one that city and school officials admit is becoming all too common, and yet still no real answers tonight on how they actually plan to address the city's worsening juvenile crime crisis.
The Joseph Lee Playfields. It's supposed to be a safe place for young people to get outside and enjoy themselves.
I come with my daughter, so we would like to be safe on this area.
Instead, it was the site of a deadly crime scene Monday.
It's a really sad.
Around 2 p.m., police responding to a shots fired call, finding a teenage boy with multiple gunshot wounds, including a fatal shot to the head.
The death of yet another student. Yet another young person.
The scene just down the hill from Patterson High School, where the boy should have been in class at the time. Evidence markers littering the ground as investigators scour the scene. Other than shell casings, 2 backpacks, and a hoodie, seemingly all that was left behind to point investigators in a possible direction.
Anything anyone saw, heard, or believed happened in this playground needs to be reported to the police right away.
So far, no arrests have been announced. Police say witnesses saw multiple people running from the park following the shooting, leading them to believe there might be multiple suspects. The killing coming as a juvenile crime wave hits Baltimore City, putting residents on edge.
I feel like it's getting worse.
It's like the first thing anybody wants to do is pull out a gun and shoot somebody.
I do think that it's a little absurd that children are walking around with guns and shooting one another, but not anything out of the ordinary.
And putting city and school officials on high alert.
Yet again, we're talking about young people using guns against other young people. And so it has to stop.
A similar scene was felt in Edmondson earlier this year. 16-year-old Deontay Dorsey, another student, shot and killed just feet from his high school during school hours. When asked if the school system was struggling to keep students inside and safe, City Schools CEO Dr. Sonia Santelisa's touting the safety protocols currently put in place.
As in the case of Edmondson, it did not occur inside of the school building. This is a school that has a weapons detection system. This is a school that has cameras in key locations throughout the building. And so there are protocols keeping young people safe.
But as she claims city schools are doing all that they can to curb crime.
Those of us who have worked with adolescents over long periods of time know that when young people want to find a way out, right, we cannot have our eyes in every place at the same time.
Call Omar Mateos just one of many parents not convinced.
I don't think they are doing enough.
Meanwhile, Mayor Scott present at the scene, but not the press conference. His office sending a statement reading in part, quote, "Each time a life is lost in Baltimore, I feel a deep pain. As your mayor, I am taking immediate actions to address youth violence in our city."
However, in that statement, no immediate actions were specifically listed. So I sent the mayor and his office these questions, asking him what immediate actions are being taken to address youth violence and what will families notice right away from these actions. As of news time tonight, I have not heard back. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Rebecca, thank you. As we mentioned, today's young victim is the fifth young person shot and killed in Baltimore this year. The first was 17-year-old Deja Garrison. She was shot and killed on New Year's Day. As Rebecca mentioned, 16-year-old Deontay Dorsey was shot and killed just days later at the shopping center across the street from his school, Edmondson West High. 4 of his classmates were also shot and wounded. 15-year-old LaRon Henderson was shot and killed along Liberty Heights Avenue on January 25th. And 16-year-old Andre Moreno Jr. was also shot at Edmondson West Side. He was shot and killed in Northeast Baltimore last month.
2 weeks ago, a Baltimore City High School student was shot and killed in Towson. 17-year-old Trayshawn Harmon was killed near Towson Circle. County leaders say the shooting was a result of an argument between 2 groups.
Well, some scary moments at Leaf Walk Elementary Middle School today. Police say an armed person was at the school today. Police initially said shots were fired at the school's basketball court. They now say shots were not fired. Police not releasing many details about the incident, just saying there was an armed person at the school and no one is in custody.
A bill City State's Attorney Ivan Bates is backing would allow for tougher penalties for some gun offenders, but it's getting some pushback now. Critics say it will make the mass incarceration problem worse. Fox 45's Keith Daniels is evaluating those claims and has a closer look at the numbers.
Well, the new city state's attorney says he's not going to allow the opposition to keep him from doing what he believes is necessary to help him fight crime. And tonight, a closer look at the numbers that could be on his side. It's a push for tougher gun laws that's facing pushback. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates wanting a juvenile crime bill which would raise maximum penalties for first-time illegal gun offenders from 3 years to 5 years across the board. But some opponents say the new gun law may not help in the crime fight. Instead, simply trigger what they call mass incarceration. Bates speaking out on Fox 45 News, taking issue with opponents, questioning their understanding of the term.
Why is anyone pushing back to make something uniformed? I don't understand. But, there are a number of individuals, the academic, the scholars, so to speak, they're the ones who say it's mass incarceration. I think they're very confused about what mass incarceration is.
Dr. Richard Vatz.
In rhetoric, we talk about what language focuses on.
Is a professor of rhetoric and communications at Towson University. He believes opponents of Bates' policies got it wrong.
With mass felonies, that's the issue, not the fact that people are being incarcerated. Simply saying too many people are being put in jail, you've got to ask, what are they being put in jail or prison for? If they're being put in jail or prison for felonies, there's no problem. As a matter of fact, there may be insufficient incarceration.
We looked at the numbers, crimes and arrests in Baltimore City in 2022. According to Fox 45's research and reporting, there were more than 26,000 total crimes in the city last year, with just over 12,000 arrests in a city with more than 576,000 residents. Of those crimes last year, nearly 600 non-fatal shootings, with a clearance rate of 23.3%. So more than half of those crimes committed in Baltimore City, no arrest, and those arrested, roughly 2.1% of city residents. The number shrinks further if focused solely on shootings. Of those actually arrested, that comes out to 132 people. Many of them, police have said, caught with illegal handguns. Supporters saying critics pointing to mass incarceration as a reason to oppose Bates' bill might not know the numbers.
It doesn't really affect them or their community, so it's something to be in opposition of, just to be in opposition of.
Well, Bates' bill has the support of some lawmakers, including Democratic Senate President Bill Ferguson. Meantime, it's not known yet when the legislation will be up for a committee vote. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Supporters say House Bill 481 is necessary because a convicted person only has to serve 25% of a jail sentence in most cases. Under current law, that means someone accused of a misdemeanor gun crime could serve less than a year in prison.
Lawmakers also continue to debate legislation surrounding juvenile justice. One bill in particular is sparking debate. It will prevent anybody under the age of 25 from being charged with felony murder. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost continues our team coverage.
There seems to be some consensus that revisiting the current felony murder law could happen during this legislative session. Right now, you can vote at 18, get drafted at 18, buy alcohol at age 21. But now supporters of this proposal say the brain isn't fully developed until someone is 25. And it's that gap in ages that seems to be really driving this debate in Annapolis right now. In Maryland, felony murder takes place when someone is killed while another felony crime is taking place, like armed robbery.
This undermines the principles of our criminal justice system.
Delegate Charlotte Crutchfield is looking to change that, backing the Youth Accountability and Safety Act. Crutchfield's plan eliminates the ability for prosecutors to charge someone 25 years old or younger with felony murder. Supporters say the plan is about appropriate charges for what was done.
This bill is about holding youth accountable for the crimes they commit, not a legal fiction that fails to consider the mental development of children.
While Republican critics,
that's irresponsible,
argued the age of responsibility in our society just doesn't add up.
I find it a little odd that our body is trying to now get people to vote at 16, to do all kinds of things as minors, yet this area where they need to be held accountable for murdering people, we're saying, oh no, they can vote, they can consent to drugs, but they can't do this.
Supporters say the part of the brain that develops last is where you make good judgment.
I just don't think repealing the statute is necessarily the right way to accomplish what's desired.
Former city prosecutor, now defense attorney, Jeremy Eldridge says he understands where the people behind the plan are coming from.
There are a lot of statistics that show that there's a disproportionate number of people under the age of 25 that are getting caught in this web.
But says an entire repeal of the law isn't the right move.
So by taking this tool out of the toolbox, you're sending a message to young people that they can be involved in a murder but not be a trigger puller.
With the surge in juvenile crime in Maryland right now, there's a lot of attention on addressing young people and violence during the General Assembly session in Annapolis. Republicans pushing for more consequences for young offenders, while some Democrats back plans like Delegate Crutchfield's.
I think this is a little too much of throwing the baby out with the bathwater as opposed to adjusting the statute.
Governor Wes Moore's pick to run the Department of Juvenile Services is from an ideological camp where no one under the age of 21 should be introduced to the adult criminal justice system because they say the brain isn't fully developed. Delegate Crutchfield pushed this plan in 2021, but that bill failed to gain enough traction to move forward. Eldridge says lawmakers should take a look at making changes to the current law instead of simply repealing it. As of right now, there is not another hearing scheduled for that bill in the House. In the State House, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Well, some are voicing frustration with the slow action in Annapolis and the perceived lack of accountability for criminals statewide. Political commentator Armstrong Williams says he's worried about what could happen if the public loses faith in the government's ability to appropriately punish offenders.
If this craziness continues, it will bring about vigilante justice. And you don't want vigilante justice in this country where people are taking it in their hands about just how these criminals should be treated.
That brings us to our question of the day. Whose crime plan do you trust more to reduce the level of violence, Democrats or Republicans? So far, 94% of those who voted say Republicans. Go to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. You can also make your voice heard. Scan the QR code on your screen to contact your local state delegates and senators. It'll take you to our website where we have listed phone numbers and email addresses.
Baltimore isn't the only big city dealing with the rise in violent crime. According to a report by the Major Cities Chiefs Association analyzing data from 2022 and 2021, more than half of the cities listed saw increases in at least 2 violent crime categories, including homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Coming up at 10:30, we'll have team coverage of the crime crisis in Baltimore and across the country.
It was a gorgeous day, and even right now, still not too bad. Our temperatures across the state are mainly in the 40s, and that's pretty mild. We are nice and dry, and will stay that way over the next few hours, but we have our next weather maker already moving across parts of the state. This warm front will move over the state, leading to showers mainly after midnight. Coming up, I'll have a look at the timing of the rain and what to expect for the rest of the week and my full forecast. Back to you.
Next on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, Baltimore City High School graduation rates at their lowest point in almost a decade. Project Baltimore investigates which schools are struggling the most and what's being done to help students. A Baltimore City police officer faces charges and suspended over a dinner bill. You have to hear what happened and why it's not the first time he's been in trouble. Plus, a break in the deadly shooting at a laundromat last week. The big reward if you can help detectives identify a killer.
Well, tonight, Baltimore City hits a 9-year low in the percentage of students graduating high school in 4 years.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps looked at the recently released 4-year graduation rates from 2022. He found 10 high schools in Baltimore City where fewer than half of the students graduated in that period.
It looks wonderful.
It's bright.
It is.
The year was 2017.
It's another stepping stone on the path to change the outcome for children.
Project Baltimore was there as the Baltimore Ravens announced a $1.5 million donation to Renaissance Academy, a high school in West Baltimore. Ravens Hall of Famer Ed Reed helped unveil the upgrades, which included a science lab and an art studio.
You want to make sure they have an environment that they can go to and it changed their lives in a great way, positive way.
Then Principal Nakia Rowe was fighting to keep the school open, saying the Ravens' investment could be a game changer for student outcomes.
We're hoping for a large return on that investment.
In 2017, when the $1.5 million was donated, Renaissance Academy had a 4-year graduation rate of 52%. Graduation rates are based on the number of students who earn a diploma in 4 years, beginning in 9th grade, and adjusted for any students who transfer in or out of the school. Last year, in 2022, the 4-year graduation rate at Renaissance had plummeted to 14.9%. Out of 67 students beginning in 9th grade, just 10 went on to graduate in 4 years.
So the solution here is not simply money.
Anaban Basu is an economist and former member of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners.
Our kids are falling further behind. And they've been falling further behind for years.
And the graduation rates reflect that. At 68.7%, Baltimore City has the lowest 4-year graduation rate in Maryland, and it's gone down every year since 2018. That year, 72.2% of city school students graduated in 4 years. It then fell to 70.3%. By 2022, it had fallen to 68.7%. The lowest in 9 years. Out of 37 high schools in Baltimore City, we can see graduation data for 33. Project Baltimore found 10 of those 33 schools had a 4-year graduation rate below 50%. That's 10 Baltimore City high schools where over 4 years, more students didn't graduate than did.
A lot of this data is informing, confirming, and helping to refine that work that we will come back to the board and update you on and roll out, frankly, to the broader community later this spring.
At this recent school board meeting, CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises addressed the drop in graduation rates. The district explained the steps it's taking to improve student outcomes, including summer learning, implementation of student learning plans, and stricter attendance verification. In her remarks at the meeting, the CEO spoke about the impact of COVID, saying the shutdowns made an already challenging situation more challenging.
Frankly, challenges that existed previously that were exacerbated. So I don't want to act as if, these were some kind of new challenges.
Yes, the pandemic accelerated the rate of decline in the pace of learning. That's true. But we've been seeing assessments of test scores, for instance, declining since 2013. And so the question becomes, what is the answer?
Basu says the current school board should consider closing persistently failing schools and place those students in schools with a higher rate of success.
Clearly, when you have schools with a 14% graduation rate in Maryland, we've got a major problem, and we have not solved the issue.
Basu also says there are not enough highly qualified teachers. The teachers' unions are powerful, which Basu says can make it difficult for schools to fire underperforming teachers.
I think the taxpayer could expect to see better performance from Baltimore City schools when we have a commitment to the kids. In other words, there are a lot of adult stakeholders in the system that I think compromise the quality of education.
Baltimore City is not the only school system to see a drop in its 4-year graduation rates. Coming up on Wednesday, we'll show you the other school systems seeing setbacks and what the state superintendent is saying about it. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Happening tomorrow, Baltimore City Council members will hold their third investigative hearing into the mayor's controversial conduit deal with BGE. The Board of Estimates talked about that deal last week, but didn't come to a decision. Fox 45 News will monitor that hearing and keep you updated on air and online.
Well, top tennis player Novak Djokovic not allowed at an upcoming tennis tournament in California. Why he's not being allowed into the United States. Crime in some U.S. cities sweeping them into a worrisome cycle. I'm Christine Frizzell with a warning ahead.
We are getting ready for our next weather maker, and that will arrive in just a couple more hours. We are nice and dry right now, but that's going to change as a warm front brings showers to the area, mainly after midnight, clearing by the time you wake up. I'll let you know what you can expect after the rain clears coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Taking a look right now at the Fox box on the top left, the #1 tennis player in the world, Novak Djokovic, will not be present at this year's Indian Wells Masters in California. Djokovic is not vaccinated against COVID-19 and is not able to get an exemption from TSA.
Top right, House Republicans investigating the pandemic say they found emails showing Dr. Anthony Fauci commissioned a research paper in February of 2020 to disprove the COVID lab leak theory. Weeks later, reports say Fauci cited the paper, which did go under peer review, but he did not disclose his role.
On the bottom left, California Governor Gavin Newsom says his state won't be doing business with Walgreens after it announced it won't distribute abortion pills in 20 Republican-led states. A federal judge in Texas is weighing a challenge to block abortion pills nationwide.
Bottom right, USA Powerlifting must now allow transgender athletes to compete in women's divisions. That's according to a court ruling out of Minnesota. The organization has indicated it intends to appeal that ruling. Well, Connecticut police say a Maryland woman was killed on a private jet on Friday. Officials say 55-year-old Dana Hyde of Montgomery County was on the plane when it ran into unexpected turbulence. The plane was traveling from New Hampshire back to Virginia, but was forced to reroute to Connecticut. Her husband and son were also on board, but were not hurt. Hyde was a prominent D.C. attorney and had served in the Obama and Clinton administrations. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating.
Protest against police rocking the city of Atlanta. I'm Kayla Gaskins with that story straight ahead.
Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan defends his decision not to run for president, why he says it's for the good of his party.
We are following three big crime stories at 10:30.
Big cities across the country are seeing a rise in crime, leading some to change how they deal with it. Why some worry some of those changes could be making the situation worse.
Protests against police rock the city of Atlanta. What happened this weekend and who police there are blaming?
In Baltimore, a $4,000 reward is on the table for information about a deadly shooting inside a laundromat.
And we have team coverage starting with Alexa Ashwell and the newly released surveillance pictures from that laundromat shooting. The victim in this case, 20 years old. The Baltimore Police Department identifying him as Kyrie Austin. As for who shot him and why, that remains under investigation. The Baltimore Police Department hopeful someone will come forward with information. Baltimore police releasing this surveillance picture in the now homicide of 20-year-old Kyrie Austin, who investigators say was shot multiple times inside a laundromat on Greenmount Avenue in North Baltimore this past Friday morning. Detectives calling the individual pictured here a person of interest and announcing a $4,000 reward in the case. Over the weekend, investigators also responding to a double shooting in southeast Baltimore. Officers were called to Jefferson Street after reports of a shooting, and at the scene say they found two men, a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old with gunshot wounds. Investigators not yet saying what they believe led up to the shooting. There have been at least 44 homicides and 86 non-fatal shootings so far this year. The Baltimore Banner reporting nearly 1 in 3 people shot in 2023 were 18 or under.
The numbers are staggering.
Former Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson weighing in on the number of young people involved in violence. As of about 2 weeks ago, statistics from the Baltimore Police Department showed 2022 had the highest number of juveniles injured in non-fatal shootings and the second highest number of homicides. The number of juveniles shot so far this year is already nearly double the number shot during the same time frame in 2022.
There are probably several reasons, but I think the number one reason is lack of consequences.
Former FBI agent, now law enforcement consultant Tyrone Powers agrees, telling FOX45 News he doesn't foresee juvenile violence slowing anytime soon.
I think we can anticipate that there will be more juveniles involved in violent crime or crime in general because they don't have the education. And secondly, there are no consequences for their actions. There are no effective consequences.
As for the double shooting, the Baltimore Police Department has not yet released any suspect information. No arrests have been made. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
A Baltimore City police sergeant has been arrested after what police call a dispute over his restaurant bill. It happened yesterday. The department says Sergeant Larry Worsley has been suspended. Court records show he's facing a number of charges, including assault and a firearm charge. Now, this isn't the first time Worsley has been in trouble. In 2018, he was accused of driving drunk, but was acquitted. Court documents show Worsley was given a breathalyzer test and blew a .14, almost double the legal limit. However, the test was taken 3 hours after Worsley was pulled over. By state law, that test must be given within 2 hours, otherwise it can't be used in court.
The former mayor of College Park is being held without bond tonight. The judge made that decision this morning, calling Patrick Woyan a danger to the community. He faces 56 counts of possession and distributing child pornography. Investigators say he uploaded explicit photos of children to the social media app Kik. He was arrested last week after police searched his home.
When people access images, it creates a demand for those who want to view these types of images. And so the ability or the desire to create more of these images then continues. And we have to put an end to this.
Woyan's defense argues he is not a danger to the community and had been an upstanding mayor for 8 years. He will be back in court for a preliminary hearing at the end of the month.
Across the country, there are growing concerns over violent crime. This is video from Atlanta, Georgia. Fireworks are thrown at officers trying to protect a proposed police training site. For months, protesters in the area have been rallying against the plan to build the training facility on 85 acres of wooded land, citing environmental concerns and fears that it will further militarize police. More than 30 people were arrested for allegedly attacking that site. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the story.
Agitators hurling Molotov cocktails, throwing bricks and fireworks, setting police cars and construction equipment on fire.
This is criminal activity, and the charges that will be brought forth will show that.
Atlanta police calling the violence a coordinated attack on construction equipment and police officers. Tensions over the new police and fire training site in the outskirts of Atlanta going back to 2021. Environmentalists fighting to preserve the wooded area. Critics arguing anarchists hijacked the cause. Atlanta's chief of police pointing out many of the agitators were not from the area.
This wasn't about a public safety training center. This was about anarchy.
Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene pointing the finger at Antifa, calling the attack an act of domestic terrorism, promising to introduce legislation this week designating Antifa a terrorist organization. So far, officials have not presented evidence Antifa was behind this attack. No police officers were physically harmed Sunday, but the department says there were some close calls. Law enforcement experts say this attack against police will likely not help the current recruiting crisis departments across the country are facing.
Young people that would otherwise be interested in entering the law enforcement profession are now so discouraged because what's being fed to them on a consistent basis through the news, through social media, through even their peers is that police officers are bad.
Austin, Texas, for example, remains 300 officers short. A senior officer telling the New York Post staffing is so bad they're pulling detectives off cases to work patrol. Those leaving the force say the city's woke culture creates a hostile work environment.
As Atlanta braces for more protests this week, police union leaders warn departments will continue to lose officers in massive numbers unless working conditions improve. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Well, violent crime is up across the nation. According to a report by the Major Cities Chiefs Association, more than half of the cities listed saw increases in homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Some of those cities include Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland. In some cases, violent crime is being met with less severe punishment or no prosecution at all. National correspondent Christine Frizzau continues our team coverage.
They are the unintended consequences of crime. With theft reportedly up at big box stores nationwide, the last two remaining Walmarts in Portland, Oregon are set to close their doors for good, following this warning from the company's CEO in December.
There have been rules that have been changed that make it not something that the police are going to prosecute, or that the criminals won't be prosecuted below certain levels. Does that matter?
If that's not corrected over time, prices will be higher and or stores will close.
Law enforcement experts warning it's part of a cycle that could lead to even more crime.
The revenue that's generated from corporate America coming into cities everywhere and operating retail establishments and other things is essential in order to fund school systems and to maintain public safety.
Some neighborhoods in Austin, Texas, now left unpatrolled due to a shortage of officers there. Many retiring in droves, reporting feeling overworked and underappreciated.
When your political leaders in the city don't support the police department, the criminals understand that, and they figure, well, if the city's not going to back them, we can do what we want.
More progressive policies scaling back prosecutions of crimes now seeing pushback. In Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot lost re-election. In New York City, voters overwhelmingly elected Mayor Eric Adams. His campaign centered on being tough on crime.
We are focused on public safety because people want to be safe. They don't feel safe and they are actually safe, then you're going to lose control of your city.
That sentiment, one reason why President Biden, bucking many in his own party, vowed to sign a bill overturning a law passed by the D.C. City Council, which, among other things, lowered penalties for carjackings. A city on edge, like many others struggling to craft police reform that doesn't make its streets less safe.
Democrats lose elections, particularly presidents and mayors, who are perceived as soft on crime.
And just as it dominated during the midterm elections, we do expect crime to be among the most important issues as the 2024 presidential campaign heats up. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting. Well, speaking of, Governor Larry Hogan explaining his decision not to run for president today. He made the announcement, of course, yesterday. Today, he spoke with Fox News, where he doubled down on his claim that he wants to avoid another multi-car pileup, saying he didn't want to pull votes away from another candidate who could beat former President Donald Trump.
I want to avoid what we saw in 2016, where we had so many candidates all fighting over a limited chunk of votes, and Donald Trump became the nominee. And I just happen to believe very strongly that we've got to figure out a way to nominate the strongest possible candidate who can win an election in November. But I'd like to get back to a party that has a more hopeful, positive vision for America and that can appeal to more voters so that we don't keep losing like we really have in the last 3 election cycles.
Well, Fox 45 News spoke with a political analyst about the former governor's decision. He says he agrees with Hogan that a crowded field isn't necessarily a good thing. However, he says he doesn't think the Republican Party can get back to what Hogan wants it to be.
This is a Donald Trump Republican Party. The party has just changed, and Hogan is not carrying the change with it. He's standing on the principles he wants to believe in. And sometimes too many candidates in a race can dilute the possibility of finding a good, strong candidate.
Well, Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost will sit down with the former governor tomorrow. In the meantime, you can find all of our reporting on the governor's announcement and what could come next for him on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Demands for more safety measures in Frederick County after a tanker explosion on US 15, what residents in that community are asking for.
And right now we're seeing areas of rain mainly in western Maryland, but this will move toward the east after midnight, leading to showers here. I'll let you know when the rain ends and what to expect for the rest of tomorrow coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.